Hello YouTube, in this video I'm going to make an egg from the movie Alien. So if you have a look, I'm going to use really simple cheap materials. So just a big bottle from a bottle of water, some Timothy hay. It's just the hay that I use for my pet armadillos, but any hay or straw or anything like that will do. Big Tesco carrier bag. Right, you can see here I've just put the massive bottle of water in the middle. It's obviously empty. This is going to make the egg a lot lighter in the long run. And then put the Timothy hay around the edge, stuff the carrier bag nice and full. And then I'm just going to use some tape. So I'm going to start with just normal sellotape, just to wrap around, just to give me my kind of rough egg shape. And then I'll build up over the top of that with some parcel tape instead, just because obviously it's a lot wider, a lot thicker and easier to cover. Right, you can see here, got through quite a lot of sellotape, even just going around this a few times, but already it's starting to kind of be pulled in at the top and form sort of more of an egg shape. You can see I used up all the rest of that sellotape, that's all gone. So onto the parcel tape. Yeah, much wider, just means you can cover it really quickly and get a shape a bit like this. The nice thing about tape is you can keep adding more pressure in the places where you need it the most, like at the top of the egg where it's more pointed. You can really kind of pull on it, and then you can let it be a bit looser around the kind of main bulge in the middle of the egg. I'd already made a face hugger and a chest burster, so it only seemed logical that I made the egg as well. Right, aluminium kitchen foil. I just took a whole load of this, like a big long strip of it, and scrunched it all up to make this bit, which is basically like 4 flaps that come on the top part of the egg. And you can see what I've done is tried to get the similar width on each of the 4 sections. It's very rough at this stage, but I can always squash these down even more. And yeah, you can see just using my hand there to get the rough sort of width. You can see into the top of the egg as well. So this will be fun to paint later on, because you can paint sort of reds and pinks down into that bit and make it really stand out. Right, next I started covering this with just little bits of kitchen paper and PVA glue. So I tear the kitchen paper so I don't have any kind of hard edges to it. And you can see all these wrinkles have been built up by kind of squashing the kitchen paper while it's still wet with the PVA glue on it. I'm worried about any drips or anything that drip down the egg. That doesn't matter at all. It's just trying to build up textures at this point. Right, any ridges that you want to stand out a little bit more than the finer ridges, you just have to use a bit more aluminium foil again. So I made these kind of curves. They give these sort of like oval sections, and again like wrinkles in the middle, but yeah, those oval shapes really make a difference, like really start to make it look more like the alien egg. I think this design by H.R.Giger is brilliant for an egg, because the 4 flaps all opened on hinges at exactly the same time to allow a chest burster to pop out. Right, for this base coat I made a really dark green just with black and green to start with. I added a tiny amount of red just to brown it down a little bit, but it's mostly green. And yeah, you can see in the video it looks pretty black actually, but there is a little hint of green in it. And from this I'm going to use this as a base colour, and then I'm going to start dry brushing or airbrushing over the top. So you can hardly tell in here compared to what I've just done, but there is a slightly brighter green which has just been dry brushed over all the kind of top surfaces. I think you can just about pick it out on the camera, but it's not too far different from the previous green. And then I'm basically going to start airbrushing after this. But you can see I think it's picked out a few of the ridges and things, which is all I was aiming to do at this stage. Right, next I mixed a much brighter green and I've gone in with the airbrush, mainly on the top ridges, but also on those kind of oval shaped parts of the egg as well. I've tried to kind of keep a lot of it really dark, because they were really dark eggs, but it's difficult because you want to kind of brighten them up and make them kind of pop out even more. So I suppose I have brightened it a reasonable amount, but I've got to be careful and just try and keep it subtle. I think I've got an Alien DVD and it's got a picture of an egg on the front of it, and it is quite a vivid green. And there's part of me that wants to make it like that, but obviously the ones in the movie are much kind of duller. It was around about this point that I decided I wanted to have it on a base as well. And I've looked up quite a lot of reference, and obviously in the movie, you've got all these kinds of what look like branches and things that stick out the bottom of the eggs. It's kind of like a nest, you know, that the egg is kind of resting in. So I thought I'd quite like to make that. So I just pulled out this bit of chipboard, and I managed to find this. I think it's from a sort of little barbecue or something. It's really rusty, but I'm just going to use that for it to sit up on, and then I can make the sort of branches come out from that. You see a little spider running off. This was from in my garden, so I just thought, what can I use? And just went and had a good look around. But you can see the egg's going to sit nicely up on there, and then I can paper mache and stuff around the edge and get those branches in. I'd also painted it at this stage, so I've got quite a lot of reds and pinks in the top area as well. So it starts to look kind of a bit more fleshy inside the egg. Right, these kind of overlapping tentacle-like branches are really fun to make because it's literally just aluminium foil squashed into long kind of strips, and then you can just twist them and turn them however you want and get them to overlap each other, and then just literally lay them in place, glue them on, and then you can start going over the top of them with the kitchen paper and PVA glue, which is essentially just paper mache. PVA glue, make sure you use wood flooring PVA glue or super PVA glue because it's much tougher, really strong. That'll stop any of these from falling off, and it'll really set them in place. But also it means any that are sticking over the edge, if they get knocked, they're not just going to kind of break off or anything. They'll be really tough. You can see that for me it's really important to be able to just look around in my shed or whatever, and or in my garden, and try and find bits and bobs that I can use for these builds. It saves me a lot of money having to go out and buy things individually. I don't need to, I just find things lying about. Right, you can see I painted all this base just with black to start with, including the edge around the chipboard, which ties it all in nicely. Again, this black just represents the base colour, and it's important to get into all the really deepest places with this. Then I've added here a lot more browns into it as well. So yeah, you can start with a dark brown. Again, I just mix red and green together. I'm using System 3 acrylics paint for all of this. But yeah, just start with a dark brown, dry brush it over, but you could have it, you know, where it's not particularly dry brush, you know, it's still fairly wet on your brush, so it's getting into quite a lot of the grooves, and then you can come back with a lighter brown and dry brush on the higher ridges. Okay, you can see little hints of like a sort of more brownish green. I've gone in there with my airbrush and added that, and again that all starts to kind of soften it and tie it in a bit more. Okay, it was about this sort of time that I was thinking it's looking okay, it's looking good colour wise, but it needs to look really kind of slimy. It needs to, yeah, have a bit more shine to it and have an effect of slime, hopefully. So I made the decision to cover the whole thing with a layer of this wood flooring PVA glue. And you can see you've got to be quite brave to do this because when you first paint it on, obviously it looks white, and you sort of lose all the colours of your egg and you think, what have I done? But remember that obviously this starts to dry and it dries clear, or not completely clear but slightly opaque, and that's what gives it that sort of slimy appearance. And this did, I think, take a couple of days to dry fully. It's tempting to go in and use a hairdryer, and if you do that, sometimes that can dull the effect slightly of the PVA glue. So I was kind of thought I'd leave it for as long as I could without hairdrying it. Maybe hairdryer it a bit at the end, but you can see the PVA glue obviously is deeper in the deeper places. So the areas that are looking whitest on this are the areas that are deeper, and they're the bits you've got to be most patient while it's drying. So you can see here, this was a couple of days later, and pretty much all of it has dried. There's still a little bit of white, mainly in the gaps in the top of the egg, the sort of lowest parts where the red is. But you can see overall it gives a really nice shine to the egg. The other benefit, of course, is that it really toughens up the egg. It means that if you knock it on something, none of the paint or anything is going to scrape off. So it's protection for the paint, and also just, an outside layer of toughness over the whole thing. Yeah, originally I wasn't going to make an egg from Alien because I tend to just make creatures or characters. I don't tend to make, largely inanimate objects, but I thought I would, just because I'd literally just made the chest burster, and I thought I really enjoyed making that, and an egg won't take me that long to do, which it didn't. It was done over sort of 2 or 3 days. Pretty quick build, really. So I just thought, yeah, it's going to look good with the chest burster and the face hugger overall. I do still have a plan to make a life-size xenomorph, but that is going to be probably a little way in the future yet, because it's quite a big thing to make. It's quite a complicated thing to make. The egg is just something you can just kind of knock up really quickly, and I didn't even use any Milliput on this. Normally, because I'm sponsored by Milliput, I use Milliput in pretty much every sculpt that I do now if I'm making a creature or something from a movie. This one I didn't. I just used all cheap materials, but it looks alright. It doesn't look too bad. And I'll save the Milliput for kind of more important projects like creatures. You can see the way these kind of tendril bits stick over the edge of the board, but I don't mind that at all. It seems to work quite well, and they are pretty tough, like I say, because they're covered in the PVA glue. You can just sort of see where that rusty thing has caused some rust to come through the PVA glue. What I'm going to do is let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and paint over the top where the PVA glue is. Sorry this has been a bit of a rushed project, but it was just something where I had the idea and I just got on and did it, and I think it's worked really well, and the main thing is that it allowed me to have a lot of fun while I was making it and get the old airbrush out as well, which is always a bit messy, but again really good fun to do. I'll leave you with some footage of the egg next to a chest burster and a face hugger that I made earlier in previous videos. Both of those were made to twice life size. The egg though is a lot smaller than it is in the movie, and that's because the face hugger that flies out of it is tiny inside the egg, really doesn't take up much of the space in the egg, and I wanted the creatures to obviously be the most kind of dynamic things. The egg is kind of more of an afterthought, but it's just really nice to have it there so you can see it with the other creatures. It'd be even nicer if one day I managed to get the xenomorph done as well. My wife is always telling me to make really tiny objects and tiny creatures, but obviously I can't resist the urge to make a life-size creature at some point, and I think the xenomorph is going to be the one. It's the best creature in any movie. Even though I haven't used any Milliput in this particular video, I'd like to thank them anyway for sponsoring this channel. If you haven't tried Milliput, it's a 2-part putty. You mix the 2 parts together and it sets rock hard in about 4 hours. So it's a perfect sculpting material. Get out and try some of that if you haven't tried it already. Hit subscribe if you want to see any videos that I post up in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.